free. Some of the best things in life are free. If there is something that you can buy with money, probably it's just something that is not truly important.
And so let's talk about the artist here. I was reading one of your blog posts from one of your blog posts, and it was on Ben Osahe, who you also have a book on. And he said, how can we continue to paint landscapes when we don't have electricity? And this is him saying the artist must be bigger than, play a much bigger role in society. So for you, how do you see the role of the artist, especially in a country like Nigeria that's been going through quite a bit for quite a while? What should be the role of the artist as a way to catalyze?
He died a few years back, and I remember when we were writing, I was writing the book on him. I used to go to Egbeda, where he was living, and we used to spend, he loved to talk. So we used to sit down there and talk. He loved it. He was a social critic, and he saw himself as a social agent. Perhaps he didn't use this word, but he had a sense of mission. I have to say this. I have to address this issue. It's not I have to sell more, or I have to be in the next Biennale, or I have to be more successful. No, I have to say this. When we were thinking of the title of the book, we said Ben Osagai, Chronicler of a Society in Flux, is the title that we gave to that book, because that's the way he saw himself, as a chronicler. So he was putting in a beautiful way, very forceful way, very challenging, in a beautiful way, very forceful way, very challenging way, in many of his works, issues that were there, corruption, or many issues. So his works were not about mere aesthetic beauty. They were about issues. He was addressing issues, whether it is corruption, or whether it is the value of money, or whether it is vanity, or issues. Now, like him, there are now quite a few among us. But when we talk of the creative industries, people think, oh, who are the ones selling, and how much, and galleries, and some of these artists who are doing something important, perhaps in a way relegated, or if not relegated, they are kept there, and they are not successful, apparently.
In the commercial sense.
In the commercial sense, but they are, some of them, successful in their circles. Perhaps they don't reach the whole world, but they can do, and they are doing. The reality is that we are quite fortunate in Nigeria. Nigeria, in this sense, is in a much better position than, I was going to say most, perhaps I would say all other African countries. The number, the diversity, the quality of the artists that we have. And I'm talking of visual arts, that is an area where I know a little bit more. Now, if you broaden it to other artistic manifestation, is even bigger. But just in the visual arts, we are fortunate to have a considerable number of competent, capable, committed artists.
And if you looked at the art scene in Nigeria, and in fact, if we zero it into Lagos, which is a market that you do a lot of work in, what would you say has been the growth trajectory in the Lagos market? What are the factors that have driven that growth? And what are the impediments? What are the challenges that still need to be resolved? And what are your thoughts? Too many questions, but what are your thoughts on how to resolve some of these challenges?
First, I think there has been an interesting trajectory here. From a time when what now we will consider artworks were considered, in most cases, objects used for ritual purposes, or for ceremonial purposes, or for practical purposes. They were objects. Say, before an object became a sculpture, in traditional society, it was a carving. It's interesting, the change of word. And the fellow who made that was not an artist. Not that he or she was not extremely gifted. No, he was a carver or a potter or a weaver or whatever. So he was a professional. It was something else. So from this, then some Europeans came. They started collecting first what they saw as exotica, but little by little, some of them realized that there was more than the different, the other, that there was quality there, and they were more. They collected more intentionally, and they were the ones supporting the system, the market, the incipient art market, the incipient art system. It was. We are talking here in the period immediately before independence, in the early years after independence. It was mostly expatriates, but this started changing. And by the 70s, you already have a small group of Nigerians who were collecting. And interestingly, they were not collecting what the most Europeans were collecting. There were masks and carvings and bronzes. No, they, in many cases, they saw it as not modern enough, or not, whatever reason they have, but they were collecting more contemporary Western art. And the art schools started, mostly after independence, and then this group of collectors, I'm talking of people, some of them have died, with, like, for instance, Rashid Badamosi, who was a very powerful collector, like Samuel Akbaju, who also died. Like some of the ones who are still alive and very active, like Prince Shillon, obviously, and a few others of that generation. They knew they have resources, all of them have enough money to buy, and they were buying, some of them, quite seriously. Prince Shillon has a collection of over 6,000 works. This is, by any standard, this is huge. I guess this is the largest collection on the continent.
Exactly.
Probably, or most likely it is, in terms of numbers. And not only numbers, there are really serious works there. So this group of people came, the expatriates continue, but this has been changing. Now we have a different situation. We have a group of young, cosmopolitan, well-educated, mainly professionals, who perhaps are not collecting works that are worth £200,000, but who are in a position comfortable enough to be able to spend 200,000 naira on a nice artwork. And these are the ones driving the market and driving the system now. Because in Nigeria, in all art systems, you need like several legs. You need the creative people who produce art. You need people